Today on Starve the Demon, AA Chapter 4, We Agnostics. Belief is optional, recovery isn't. Hey, welcome to Starve the Demon. Recovery by any means necessary. We are going to continue our Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book study. We are on Chapter 4, page 44. We Agnostics. I'm going to read this as if I were talking to a sponsee that is new to the program and hasn't read the book before. I read, I share, I explain, and in the description, I'm going to have assignment questions that sponsors and sponsees can go through together. Because, maybe you don't have a sponsor yet, or maybe you're a new sponsor and you need ideas on what assignments to give your sponsee. So I'm going to throw some of those out there, just some suggestions. Hopefully they will help you. Use them if you can or you want to. Leave me a comment. Let me know if they've helped you out, if there's something that you would recommend that I give as an assignment or a journal prompt that I haven't. That would be great. For those of you that are new, I recommend you read your book with a highlighter and a pen so you can highlight the things that stand out to you, that remind you or let you know of where you're trying to get to, something that's inspiring to you. And then in pen, I always like to make a little note of things that I would talk with my sponsor or my sponsees, depending on what situation I'm in. But it's your book. It's a workbook. It's a textbook. It's not a novel, so to speak. Okay, so Chapter 4, We Agnostics. In the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism. We know we have made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. If, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. We say may, might, could be, because only you can decide if you're an alcoholic. Only you can decide if you are a heavy drinker and suffer the same consequences as an alcoholic, but are able to, if necessary, put the drink down and just walk away from it. That's what alcoholics can't do. And it says right here, if you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably alcoholic. If you can't stop once you start, if when you're not drinking, you're thinking about drinking, that is mental obsession and physical craving, and those are the hallmarks of alcoholism. To one who feels he is an atheist or agnostic, such an experience seems impossible. But to continue as he is means disaster, especially if he's an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. To be doomed to an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face. But it isn't so difficult. About half our original fellowship were of exactly that type. At first, some of us tried to avoid the issue, hoping against hope we were not true alcoholics. But after a while, we had to face the fact that we must find a spiritual basis of life, or else. Perhaps it is going to be that way with you. Perhaps. But cheer up. Something like half of us thought we were atheist or agnostics. Our experience shows that you need not be disconcerted. If a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. But we found that such codes and philosophies did not save us, no matter how much we tried. We could wish to be moral. We could wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, we could will these things with all our might, but the needed power wasn't there. Our human resources, as marshaled by the will, were not sufficient. They failed utterly. Our tiny little human minds cannot overcome this demon disguised as a disease that has taken away our power of choice. Lack of power. That was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. Now, those words, power greater than ourselves, are written in italics, which if you've been paying attention to the book study I'm doing so far, back when the book was written in 1939, it cost extra to have things written in italics. So anything in the book that's written in italics is pretty important. Power greater than ourselves. So what is the power greater than yourself? Does it have to be God? Does it have to be Jesus? Does it have to be Buddha? Does it have to be Allah? Absolutely not. I bet if you think about it, you can think of a power greater than yourself. Give up? How about gravity? You think gravity is not a power greater than you? I dare you to hover. I dare you. Show me. Show me pictures of you hovering that aren't AI, that aren't CGI, or whatever the hell you call it. Gravity is a power greater than you. That group of drunks, GOD, group of drunks, sitting in that room in a circle, talking about the solution to the problem of alcoholism, that group is a power greater than myself as an individual. I can go in there and get experience, strength, and hope from people that have been around the same blocks I have, but have found a way to deal with life on life's terms. And I can get advice, I can get experience, I can get whatever I need to go through whatever it is that I'm going through. There's somebody else in that room that's already gone through it. Thank you. So there are powers greater than myself. My addictions, hands down, no doubt, a power greater than me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have ripped and ran for 25 years and ended up in prison. I would not have made the choices and decisions that I made in my life if not unable to overcome this demon all by myself, because it is a power greater than me. It had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how were we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. That means we have written a book which we believe to be spiritual as well as moral. And it means, of course, that we are going to talk about God. Here, difficulty arises with agnostics. Now, if you're not sure, an atheist is somebody that believes there is no God. An agnostic is someone that believes that there is something, some creative force that moves everything in the universe, but they don't have a label for it. They're not convinced that it's this or it's that or it's this other thing, or that our tiny little human minds have figured it out yet. But they do believe that there is something. Many times we talk to a new man and watch his hope rise as we discuss his alcoholic problem and explain our fellowship. But his face falls when we speak of spiritual matters, especially when we mention God, for we have reopened a subject which our man thought he had neatly evaded or entirely ignored. We know how he feels. We have shared his honest doubt and prejudice. Some of us have been violently anti-religious. To others, the word God brought up a particular idea of him with which someone had tried to impress them during childhood. Perhaps we rejected this particular conception because it seemed inadequate. With that rejection, we imagined we had abandoned the God idea entirely. We were bothered with the thought that faith and dependence upon a power beyond ourselves was somewhat weak, even cowardly. We looked upon this world of warring individuals, warring theological systems, and inexplicable calamity with deep skepticism. We looked askance at many individuals who claimed to be godly. How could a supreme being have anything to do with it all? And who could comprehend a supreme being anyhow? Yet in other moments, we found ourselves thinking, when enchanted by a starlit night, who then made all this? There was a feeling of awe and wonder, but it was fleeting and soon lost. I have to agree with that. When I was a child, I was taken to church every Sunday morning, every Wednesday night, Baptist, Pentecostal, Bible thumping, holy rolling, get the spirit, fall on the floor kind of thing. Unfortunately, the people that were taking me there were also the ones abusing me. So as I got a little older and could stand up for myself and make some choices on my own and decisions on my own, I wholeheartedly rejected all those people. And with that, I also rejected the teachings of the church. As I got older and a little more experienced and had a little life under my belt, I could see the miracles in life. I could see the hand of whatever that creator God is. I can't possibly believe that we come from nothing, are nothing. It all leads to nothing. There's no reason for it. What I do understand is that I don't understand. I understand that it's all far too much for me to understand. And now I understand that it's okay that I don't understand. I don't have to understand. I have to do the next right thing. You know, we're here to do God's work, not his job. I don't worry about the results. I keep my integrity intact. Both. I keep my integrity in check and intact. And I can't be worried about how my little piece of the puzzle fits into the great big puzzle that is, the multitude of universes and life. And there's these esoteric questions that are truthfully beyond me. And I am okay with that. Right. So I came back to these religious, spiritual ideals as an adult after having rejected them as a child. So some of that had to do with recoveries. I have a natural interest in history, philosophy, religion. That just fascinates me. I'm great at Trivial Pursuit. You would want me on your team. I am the queen of useless information. But anyway, so that's what that little paragraph makes me think of, that I did reject all of the teachings of my youth that had to do with religion. However, I think as an adult, I realized that God didn't leave me. I left him. I was hiding from him, but I have been found. Yes, we of agnostic temperament have had these thoughts and experiences. Let us make haste to reassure you. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. Much to our relief, we discovered we did not need to consider another's conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and to effect a contact with him. As soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe underlying the totality of things, we began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction, provided we took other simple steps. We found that God does not make too hard terms with those who seek him. To us, the realm of spirit is broad. When, therefore, we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. It doesn't have to be what I say it is. And as a matter of fact, when I had my first sponsor and was going through my steps, one of my assignments for step 2 was I had to write down what God was and what God wasn't, what God was capable of and what God was not capable of. It was not enough for me to just say, oh, yeah, sure, I believe there's something. No, I had to define what that was. And that really did help me moving forward in my recovery. Because I could remind myself, wait a minute, my God is not that. My God is this. And it would help me to keep things in perspective. We needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? So ask yourself that. Do you believe there's a power greater than yourself? Are you willing to believe that there's a power greater than yourself? It takes faith. If you think you don't have faith, I'll tell you this. I have faith that you could drop me in any city, anywhere, no money, no food, no phone. And before the end of the day, I will have a man, a place to stay, a phone, some money, and I'll be high. I have faith in that. So if I can have that kind of faith, if I can have faith that when I turn that light switch on, the light's going to come on. And if not, I just have to change the bulb and it's all going to be fine. I have faith this chair I sit in is going to hold me up. I have faith that my microphone's going to work and these headphones are going to work. And all of that is faith. I believe that these things are going to happen. And yay, they do. It's wonderful. Just saying, be willing to believe, be willing to have faith. You know what? Maybe there is a greater something. Maybe there is a spirit that moves everything. Maybe there is natural law. Maybe gravity works. As soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. Now, there's a note that says, please be sure to read Appendix 2 on spiritual experience, and we're going to do that. If you ever watch in my interview with Kim, she talks about this very thing, the spiritual experience. That was great news for us, for we had assumed we could not make any use of spiritual principles unless we accepted many things on faith which seemed difficult to believe. When people presented us with spiritual approaches, how frequently did we all say, I wish I had what that man has. Sure, it would work if I could only believe as he believes. But I cannot accept as surely true the many articles of faith which are so plain to him. So it was comforting to learn that we could commence on a simpler level. Besides a seeming inability to accept much on faith, we often found ourselves handicapped by obstinacy, sensitiveness, and unreasoning prejudice. Many of us have been so touchy that even casual references in spiritual things made us bristle with antagonism. That's your demon, because your demon doesn't want to hear about spiritual principles. Your demon doesn't want to hear about things like honesty, integrity, perseverance. These are things that no, don't be like that. Don't be like that. No, be over here. Be shady. Be a liar. Be unreliable. Be somebody nobody could trust. That's what your demon feeds on. When you stop being like that and you start being honest and reliable, oh, that just starves him. That's how we starve the demon. He don't know what to do with that. And then you can escape. This sort of thinking had to be abandoned. This sensitiveness and unreasoned prejudice, being so touchy, that has to be abandoned. You got to let that go. Though some of us resisted, we found no great difficulty in casting aside such feelings. Faced with alcoholic destruction, we soon became as open-minded on spiritual matters as we had tried to be on other questions. In this respect, alcohol was a great persuader. It finally beat us into a state of reasonableness. Sometimes this was a tedious process. We hope no one else will be prejudiced for as long as some of us were. The reader may still ask why he should believe in a power greater than himself. We think there are good reasons. Let us look at some of them. The practical individual of today is a stickler for facts and results. Nevertheless, the 20th century readily accepts theories of all kinds, provided they are firmly grounded in fact. We have numerous theories, for example, about electricity. Oh, I already said that. I've read this before. Everybody believes them without a murmur of doubt. Why this ready acceptance? Simply because it is impossible to explain what we see, feel, direct, and use without a reasonable assumption at a starting point. You have to start with the idea that the electricity is going to work, that it's wired to whatever it needs to be wired to, and the power's coming in from wherever it comes into, and when you flip the switch, the light comes on. Do you have to be an electrician to flip the switch and make the light come on? No. Everybody nowadays believes in scores of assumptions for which there is good evidence, but no perfect visual proof. And does not science demonstrate that visual proof is the weakest proof? This was written in 1939. We're in 2025, in the world of AI and CGI. And you can't tell if something's real or not real. So just because you could see it doesn't mean it's true. Conversely, if you can't see it, doesn't mean it's not true. It is being constantly revealed as mankind studies the material world that outward appearances are not inward reality at all. To illustrate, the prosaic steel girder is a mass of electrons whirling around each other at incredible speed. These tiny bodies are governed by precise laws, and these laws hold true throughout the material world. Science tells us so. We have no reason to doubt it. When, however, the perfectly logical assumption is suggested that underneath the material world and life as we see it, there is an all-powerful, guiding, creative intelligence, right there, our perverse streak comes to the surface, and we laboriously set out to convince ourselves it isn't so. This book right here, if you look at it with a good enough microscope, you're going to see that it's moving. The particles in it are moving. The atoms in it, they're all moving. Everything's got a frequency. The energy doesn't die. It just changes form. So we can't see that it's moving, but it's moving. Look it up. Don't believe me. Go get your Grok, get your Google, get your Chat GPT. Look it up. So we know that that's happening. So why can't we believe that there's other underlying things that we can't see making things happen? You don't believe in karma. You don't believe in what goes around comes around. You reap what you sow. These are all universal ideas that have been around since the dawn of time. Why? Because they're true. You gotta believe me. And we work laboriously, set out to convince ourselves in. So we will work so hard to prove that something's not true because we don't want to believe that it's true. It's ridiculous the amount of energy, effort, time that we spend on the negative stuff, but we don't want to spend any time on the positive stuff. It's just crazy. When I say we, I mean like just people in general. Not everybody. There's exceptions to everything. I don't mean all, but in general. We read wordy books and indulge in windy arguments, thinking we believe this universe needs no God to explain it. Were our contentions true, it would follow that life originated out of nothing, means nothing, and proceeds nowhere. I don't believe that for a second. Instead of regarding ourselves as intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation, we agnostics and atheists chose to believe that our human intelligence was the last word, the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the end of all. Rather vain of us, wasn't it? We who have traveled this dubious path beg you to lay aside prejudice, even against organized religion. We have learned that whatever the human frailties of various faiths may be, those faiths have given purpose and direction to millions. People of faith have a logical idea of what life is all about. Actually, we used to have no reasonable conception whatever. We used to amuse ourselves by cynically dissecting spiritual beliefs and practices when we might have observed that many spiritually minded persons of all races, colors, and creeds were demonstrating a degree of stability, happiness, and usefulness which we should have sought ourselves. I'm just going to let that sit. Instead, we looked at the human defects of these people and sometimes used their shortcomings as a basis of wholesale condemnation. We talked of intolerance while we were intolerant ourselves. Talked of intolerance. They're so intolerant. They're so this, they're so that. Okay, judgy. While you're sitting there judging them for believing, just, let these things sit. Let these little seeds, maybe they'll bloom. We miss the reality and the beauty of the forest because we were diverted by the ugliness of some of its trees. We never gave the spiritual side of life a fair hearing. In our personal stories, you will find a wide variation in the way each teller approaches and conceives of the power which is greater than himself. Whether we agree with a particular approach or conception seems to make little difference. Experience has taught us that there are matters about which, for our purpose, we need not be worried. They are questions for each individual to settle for himself. On one proposition, however, these men and women are strikingly agreed. Every one of them has gained access to and believes in a power greater than himself. This power has in each case accomplished the miraculous, the humanly impossible. As a celebrated American statesman put it, let's look at the record. Here are thousands of men and women, worldly indeed. They flatly declare that since they have come to believe in a power greater than themselves, to take a certain attitude toward that power, and to do certain simple things, there has been a revolutionary change in their way of living and thinking. In the face of collapse and despair, in the face of the total failure of their human resources, they found that a new power, peace, and happiness and sense of direction flowed into them. This happened soon after they wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements. Once confused and baffled by the seeming futility of existence, they show the underlying reasons why they were making heavy going of life. Leaving aside the drink question, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory. They show how the change came over them. When many hundreds of people are able to say that the consciousness of the presence of God is today the most important fact of their lives, they present a powerful reason why one should have faith. When we talk about being in recovery, each and every individual is responsible for his or her own actions. Each and every individual is responsible for his or her own recovery. My daily existence, my moment-to-moment existence relies solely on my spiritual fitness, on my relationship with my higher power, my actions, my motivations, my intentions. All of that is completely within my control. Now, I can decide to exert my will and be mad that things aren't how I want them to be, or I can be accepting and have a nice, peaceful, happy existence. It's my choice. I get to pick. I get to decide. I and every single individual in recovery gets to decide. There is no group think. I know that there's this common myth that AA is a cult. It's not. It demands individuality. It demands personal accountability. It demands personal responsibility because nobody's going to do it for you. I will not do for you what you can do for yourself. I will help you. I will explain anything I can explain. I can answer any questions I can answer. I can give advice, experience, strength, hope. I can't do anything for you. All of it, you have to do yourself as an individual. That's just how it works, which is a whole nother chapter. This world of ours has made more material progress in the last century, last 2 centuries. Remember, this is written in 1939. We're over here in 2025, in the 21st century, not even in the 20th century anymore. This world of ours has made more material progress in the last century than in all the millenniums which went before. Almost everyone knows the reason. Students of ancient history tell us that the intellect of men in those days was equal to the best of today. Yet in ancient times, material progress was painfully slow. The spirit of modern scientific inquiry, research, and invention was almost unknown. In the realm of the material, men's minds were fettered by superstition, tradition, and all sorts of fixed ideas. Some of the contemporaries of Columbus thought a round earth preposterous. Others came near putting Galileo to death for his astronomical heresies. Now, what did Columbus do? He said, hey, the world's round. We can go this way. Galileo, he was the one that found the planets and figured out that the earth revolved around the sun and not the other way around. We asked ourselves this: are not some of us just as biased and unreasonable about the realm of the spirit as were the ancients about the realm of the material? Even in the present century, American newspapers were afraid to print an account of the Wright brothers' first successful flight at Kitty Hawk. The Wright brothers flew the first airplane, and people had said that could never happen, that people couldn't fly. We couldn't make an airplane. People wouldn't fly. Bumblebees aren't supposed to fly. If you look that up, I won't go into the bumblebee thing, but it's interesting. We asked ourselves this: had not all efforts of flight failed before the Wright brothers at Kitty Hawk? Did not Professor Langley's flying machine go to the bottom of the Potomac River? Was it not true that the best mathematical minds had proved that man could not fly? Had not people said God had reserved this privilege to the birds? Only 30 years later, the conquest of the air was almost an old story and airplane travel was in full swing. But in most fields, our generation has witnessed complete liberation of our thinking. Show any longshoreman a Sunday supplement describing a proposal to explore the moon by means of a rocket, and he will say, I bet they do it. Maybe not so long either. 39, before we ever put a rocket up in space, before anybody ever walked on the moon. Look what's happening now. Look at the satellites and the Wi-Fi and all these things they couldn't even have fathomed in this book. Is not our age characterized by the ease with which we discard old ideas for new, by the complete readiness with which we throw away the theory or gadget which does not work for something new which does? In my lifetime, I remember 8-tracks. I had Twisted Sister on vinyl, cassettes, MP3s, CDs. I used to have 1,000 DVD collection. Now everything's streamed. I don't even pay for cable anymore. I watch a lot of YouTube. We had to ask ourselves why we shouldn't apply to our human problems with the same readiness to change our point of view. We were having trouble with personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. We were a prey to misery and depression. We couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy, we couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. Was not a basic solution of these bedevilments more important than whether we should see newsreels of lunar flight? Of course it was. When we saw others solve their problems by a simple reliance upon the spirit of the universe, we had to stop doubting the power of God. Our ideas did not work, but the God idea did. The Wright brothers' almost childish faith that they could build a machine which would fly was the mainspring of their accomplishment. Without that, nothing could have happened. We agnostics and atheists were sticking to the idea that self-sufficiency would solve our problem. When others showed us that God's sufficiency worked with them, we began to feel like those who had insisted the Wrights would never fly. Logic is great stuff. We liked it. We still like it. It is not by chance we were given the power to reason, to examine the evidence of our senses, and to draw conclusions. This is one of man's magnificent attributes. We agnostically inclined would not feel satisfied with a proposal which does not lend itself to reasonable approach and interpretation. Hence, we are at pains to tell why we think our present faith is reasonable, why we think it more sane and logical to believe than not to believe, why we say our former thinking was soft and mushy when we threw up our hands in doubt and said, we don't know. Something my father used to tell me when I was a younger girl. He would say, it's better to believe in God and be wrong than not believe in God and be right. And what he meant was that if you live your life as if there's a God, as if there's somebody watching you and watching out for you, and that you will eventually answer to, you might behave a little better. Your intentions might be better. Maybe you don't lie, cheat, steal, whatever. You will behave in such a way that you could go to heaven. And if there is no heaven, well, you've managed to create a nice life for yourself along the way. But if you believe there is no God, nobody's looking at you, nobody's looking out for you, doesn't matter what you do because we are nothing and we end up nowhere. That can create a very bleak, shady, bad kind of life. Then what if you're wrong? What if there is a God and you done lived this shady life and now you got to answer for it at the end? Better to believe and be wrong than not believe and be right. Wise words I pass on to you. When we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis we could not postpone or evade, we had to fearlessly face the proposition that either God is everything or else he is nothing. God either is or he isn't. What was our choice to be? Arrived at this point, we were squarely confronted with the question of faith. We couldn't duck the issue. Some of us had already walked far over the bridge of reason toward the desired shore of faith. The outlines of the promise of the new land had brought luster to tired eyes and fresh courage to flagging spirits. Friendly hands had stretched out in welcome. We were grateful that reason had brought us so far, but somehow we couldn't quite step ashore. Perhaps we had been leaning too heavily on reason that last mile, and we did not like to lose our support. That was natural, but let us think a little more closely. Without knowing it, had we not been brought to where we stood by a certain kind of faith? For did we not believe in our own reasoning? We have faith in our reasoning. Did we not have confidence in our ability to think? What was that but a sort of faith? Yes, we had been faithful, abjectly faithful to the God of reason. So, in one way or another, we discovered that faith had been involved all the time. We found, too, that we had been worshipers. What a state of mental gooseflesh that used to bring on. Had we not variously worshipped people, sentiment, things, money, and ourselves? And then, with a better motive, had we not worshipfully beheld the sunset, the sea, or a flower? Who of us had not loved somebody or something? How much did these feelings, these loves, these worships have to do with pure reason? Little or nothing, we saw at last. Were not these things the tissue out of which our lives were constructed? Did not these feelings, after all, determine the course of our existence? It was impossible to say we had no capacity for faith or love or worship. In one form or another, we had been living by faith and little else. You had faith that when you went and got your dope, that it was going to get you high. You had faith when you took that drink, it was going to get you drunk. Imagine life without faith. Were nothing left but pure reason, it wouldn't be life. But we believed in life. Of course we did. We could not prove life in the sense that you can prove a straight line in the shortest distance between 2 points. Yet there it was. Could we still say the whole thing was nothing but a mass of electrons created out of nothing, meaning nothing, whirling on to a destiny of nothingness? Of course we couldn't. The electrons themselves seemed more intelligent than that. At least so the chemists said. Hence, we saw that reason isn't everything. Neither is reason, as most of us see it, entirely dependable. Though it emanate from our best minds, what about people who proved that man could never fly? And then man went and flew. Yet we had been seeing another kind of flight, a spiritual liberation from this world, people who rose above their problems. They said God made these things possible, and we only smiled. We had seen spiritual release, but liked to tell ourselves it wasn't true. Actually, we were fooling ourselves, for deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or other it is there. For faith in a power greater than ourselves and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was a part of our makeup, just as much as the feeling we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there. He was as much a fact as we were. We found the great reality deep down within us. In the last analysis, it is only there that he may be found. It was so with us. We can only clear the ground a bit. If our testimony helps sweep away prejudice, enables you to think honestly, encourages you to seek diligently within yourself, then, if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway. With this attitude, you cannot fail. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. In this book, you will read the experience of a man who thought he was an atheist. His story is so interesting that some of it should be told now. His change of heart was dramatic, convincing, and moving. Our friend was a minister's son. He attended church school where he became rebellious at what he thought an overdose of religious education. For years thereafter, he was dogged by trouble and frustration, business failure, insanity, fatal illness, suicide. These calamities in his immediate family embittered and depressed him. Post-war disillusionment, ever more serious alcoholism, impending mental and physical collapse brought him to the point of self-destruction. One night, when confined in a hospital, he was approached by an alcoholic who had known a spiritual experience. Our friend's gorge rose as he bitterly cried out, "If there is a God, he certainly hasn't done anything for me." But later, alone in his room, he asked himself this question: is it possible that all the religious people I have known are wrong? While pondering the answer, he felt as though he lived in hell. Then, like a thunderbolt, a great thought came. It crowded out all else. This is in italics. Who are you to say there is no God? This man recounts that he tumbled out of bed to his knees. In a few seconds, he was overwhelmed by a conviction of the presence of God. It poured over and through him with the certainty and majesty of a great tide of flood. The barriers he had built through the years were swept away. He stood in the presence of infinite power and love. He had stepped from bridge to shore. For the first time, he lived in conscious companionship with his Creator. This was our friend's cornerstone fixed in place. No later vicissitude had shaken it. His alcoholic problem was taken away. That very night, years ago, it disappeared. Save for a few brief moments of temptation, the thought of drink has never returned, and at such times a great revulsion has risen up in him. Seemingly, he could not drink even if he would. God had restored his sanity. What is this but a miracle of healing? Yet its elements are simple. Circumstances made him willing to believe. He humbly offered himself to his Maker. Then he knew. Even so has God restored us all to our right minds. To this man, the revelation was sudden. Some of us grow into it more slowly, but he has come to all who have honestly sought him. When we drew near to him, he disclosed himself to us. Here, I second that, because in my own life, like I said, I have seen miracles happen. And that's what we always say, keep coming back. Don't leave before the miracle happens. And I know my sobriety is absolutely a miracle. My husband's sobriety, absolutely a miracle. If you were to talk to a lot of people that are in recovery and however they got there, whatever program they worked, whether or not they went to rehab, whether or not they were on MAT, whether or not they went through a 12-step program or did it through church or whatever it was, the majority of people in recovery can attest to the presence of a power greater than themselves, a higher power. Some don't. There are exceptions. You will always find that not all of them found it that way. Not all of them do it that way. Okay, not all of them do it that way. Not everybody works 12 steps. Not everybody goes to church. Not everybody goes to rehab. Not everybody gets on MAT. Not everybody is abstinent. Okay, I'm talking about the vast majority. Speaking in general, this is what you find time and time again. Sit down and talk to some people in recovery and see what they have to say. They're probably going to tell you that it's a miracle. So before I finish up, I'm going to Appendix 2 in the back of the book. Spiritual experience. The terms spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which, upon careful reading, shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in many, many different forms. And that's the thing. You need to have a psychic change. There's an old saying, I love cliches. The same person will drink again. If you don't change the things that are wrong with you, the things that are wrong in your life, that you're using drugs and alcohol as the wrong solution to these problems that you have, if you don't change that, if you don't change the inside, you will drink again. Because that's the only solution you know. You haven't changed anything else, you just quit drinking. It doesn't get it. It doesn't get it. It's not what the demon feeds on. The demon doesn't feed on alcohol. The demon feeds you alcohol to get what it needs. So, yet it is true that our first printing gave many readers the impression that these personality changes or religious experiences must be in the nature of sudden and spectacular upheavals. Happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous. I don't get a burning bush. I don't have a red phone directly to God. I get my messages just like everybody else. I do think that God speaks to us through other people. When I hear the same thing like 5 times from 5 different sources, I think, you know what? Maybe the universe is trying to tell me something. In the first few chapters, a number of sudden revolutionary changes are described. Though it was not our intention to create such an impression, many alcoholics have nevertheless concluded that in order to recover, they must acquire an immediate and overwhelmingly God consciousness, followed at once by a vast change in feelings and outlook. Among our rapidly growing membership of thousands, now millions, of alcoholics, such transformations, though frequent, are by no means the rule. Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James calls the educational variety, because they develop slowly over a period of time. Quite often, friends of the newcomer are aware of the difference long before he is himself. He finally realizes that he has undergone a profound alteration in his reaction to life, that such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone. What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline. With few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped an unsuspected inner resource which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. Most of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. Most emphatically, we wish to say that any alcoholic capable of honestly facing his problems in the light of our experience can recover, provided he does not close his mind to all spiritual concepts. He can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial. We find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery. These are indispensable. There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation. I think I did a video about this before. I don't know anything about it. I have no experience with it. I haven't read anything about it, but that's not going to work for me. I have contempt prior to investigation. I don't like it. I'm not going to learn anything about it. I'm not going to research it. I'm not going to find out for myself. I'm just going to believe that I don't like that. Sounds kind of ridiculous, right? Don't I look silly doing that? Oh, yeah. I feel silly doing that. So I try not to do that. So that's it for that chapter. I'm going to keep coming back. I hope you keep coming back. Take deep breaths. Think happy thoughts. Love everybody. Let God sort them out. I'll see y'all next time.